The thing that is important is that expect things to get better for you, because they are. See, life is cyclic. You're not, whatever experience you're having right now, it has not come to stay. It has come to pass. Not to stay, just to pass. It's just going through. The biggest challenge is to know what's happening. This is a part of this thing we call life. This too shall pass. And maintaining perspective, putting it in perspective. I was doing a training at a college, and it was a 2-day training during orientation. And in the training that I provide, I'm a motivational speaker, but I conduct processes in personal dynamics, where people begin to go through changes that stimulate the right and left hemisphere of the brain, enable them to see themselves differently. I conducted this particular simulation with these young kids, 17 and 18 years of age, so that they would begin to see how they make decisions and how they would survive in this particular simulation process we gave them. We had them to do it individually and then collectively. Over 30% of them wrote down as their first option, in order to survive, they would commit suicide. First thing they wrote down. Suicide among young people has increased 300%. Over 5,000 will successfully take their lives this year. Why? Why did they do that? I said, I was so shocked. I said, what do you mean? Well, at least we would not suffer. And then they had the nerve to write down all of the other things they were going to do after they committed suicide. I said, listen, Kadumbo. No, when you come up with a permanent solution for a temporary problem, that's it. Game's over. That's it. You're not going to do anything. Anybody wrote suicide at the top, you can put your pencil down. See, a lot of us, because of our limited vision of ourselves, a lot of us who begin to focus on problems and enable them to overwhelm us, we begin to think that we have no options. We begin to believe that there's no way out. Repeat after me, there's always a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. Shake somebody's hand on your right and left and say, I'm unstoppable. You've got to make those kind of declarations to yourself. I'm unstoppable. This will not get me down. And if I get knocked down, I'm going to be like Leo Pascal. You said you're going to have some low moments in life, but when you do, you will have high lows when you work on yourself. What are some of those things that you can do during this period of time? Go for walks. Do some things for you. Just go for a stroll so you can engage in some reflective thinking on life, on yourself, looking and enjoying the universe, smelling the roses along the way. Listen to upbeat music, music that inspires you. I have oldie but goodies. I have strategies that I engage in to recharge my batteries. I'm preparing for that because I know things are going to happen that I cannot anticipate. A very good friend of mine died the other day. I had a program for myself. I have books that I read that inspire me, tapes that I listen to that fire me up. Because you're going to have sometimes low moments when you won't want to get out of bed. You just want to stay there. At times you won't want to come out the house. At times you'll be feeling bad and don't know why. What's wrong? I don't know. Just leave me alone. Why did that happen? I don't know. It's called life. The other thing is, take full responsibility for your life. Accept where you are and the responsibility that you're going to take yourself where you want to go. Someone said we have two primary choices in life. We can either accept conditions as they exist, or we can take the responsibility to change them. See, a lot of people want to exempt themselves from taking responsibility. All they want to do is talk about the problem. Every time you see them, they'll tell you their story over and over and over and over again. No, no. You want to take responsibility for your life. I got me here, I can get me out of this. And I'm getting out. I'm not going to be a volunteer victim. George Bernard Shaw said there are two kinds of people in life. You know, he said those that make things happen, those that watch things happen, and those that don't know what happened. And he said the people that get along in this life look around for the circumstances that they want, and if they can't find them, they make them. They create them. So part of beginning to get unstuck, you've got to decide that the behavior pattern that you have adopted doesn't work for you. You've got to change your strategies, and changing your strategy means reinventing your life. Recreating you, and you have the power to do that. You can decide that you're going to change, that you're not going to be a wimp. You can decide that you're going to stand up to life. You can decide that I'm going to live each day as if it were my last. You have the power to make that decision. You can decide I'm going to work on myself and develop myself. I'm going to empower me. And all of these things that are happening to me right now, they're just temporary inconveniences. They're not stronger than I am. I'm in charge here. Next thing is separate what you do from who you are. That's what the guilt trap is about. See, a lot of folk won't let you forget what you used to do or what you have done, what mistakes you've made. All of us have made some mistakes in life. All of us have done some things that if we had them to do over again, we wouldn't do it again. There are a lot of things that if I had it to do over again, if I knew then what I know now, I would have done it differently. Well, it didn't happen that way. And that's what you call life. I didn't do it like that. Oh, you don't want me to live that down, huh? You want to keep on putting that in my face about what I did. Guess what? I'm not interested. That's what I did then. Won't do it today, so you are picking on an innocent man. Hello. So as you're in the process of reinventing your life, write a description of the kind of person that you want to be. What are the things that you must overcome? What qualities about your personality you know that you're going to have to change because those particular characteristics are liabilities to you? What are your assets? What are your strong points? Look at and evaluating yourself to make that determination. Other thing is that in order to get out of a rut, we need some coaching. Find some trusted critics. People that you know care about you and love you. So there's some things that keeps us from growing and getting out of ruts. Number one, we identify with feedback. We take it personal when someone wants to give us some feedback on where we are falling short and tell us about our blind spots. We want to have everything being positive about us. We're not perfect. It hurts. I have a friend who's a trusted critic. I don't like him, but I love him. He doesn't tell me the things I want to hear. He tells me what I need to hear so I can grow. It hurts. It hurts when he put me on the hot seat. I can't stand it. But that's the only way that I can grow. And I'm glad that he loves me enough to risk our friendship to tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear. Get a support group, somebody that you can talk to. People who perhaps might have a similar problem. Support groups are very powerful, that you can share some of the challenges that you're going through. And it might be a situation where one person can give you an idea of how they handle that situation and create an opening for you. Begin to stimulate some possibilities in your mind on how you can resolve the problem. We can't grow by ourselves. As I mentioned before, we grow from people and projects. The other thing is about life, when things happen to you, when you permit things to use you, you can't change the past, but you can interpret. You can reinterpret how you see it. For years, I was going around with a heavy load on my shoulders, feeling bad because I was adopted. Doing interviews for adoption agencies and foster homes. And I was on television once, and I told these people in this particular interview that I was giving away my twin brother and I when we were 6 weeks of age. A friend of mine, fortunately, was listening to the program. And she said, Les, I'd like to have lunch with you. And so I went over to see her. She said, when a woman carries a baby for 9 months, feeling that life movement in her, it's automatic and natural for her to learn to love that baby. to expect it to come here when she bears the pain to bring it into the world. Your mother, Mamie Brown, when she came in to adopt you guys, she didn't go through that process. She looked at whoever your biological mother was and said, I'll take her. You weren't given away less. You were chosen with love.
One of the things that I love about you is that you live in my favorite place in the world, Ohio.
Oh, yes.
Because I'm an Ohio guy.
Is that right?
And I grew up in Delaware, Ohio, lived in Columbus for many years, just had my event in Columbus because I try to bring back meaning to the place that helped me so much when I was...
And it did so much for me. I went to Columbus, I was 22, and became a disc jockey there, and did that for many years. And then I evolved into a community activist and became very, very much involved in politics and ran for the Ohio legislature, was elected to 3 terms. And then my mother became ill and resigned and went back to Miami, Florida, where I'm from originally. But Columbus, I came in as a boy, but I left there as a man. I grew up. There are so many things and so many memories that helped me to become the person that I am, and the people that played a major role in my life.
Really? You're 22 when you went there, is that what you said?
Yes, yes.
And then you moved to Cleveland event later?
No. Then when after that, I was elected to the Ohio legislature, and then I went back to Miami to take care of my mother. My sister called me and said, are you sitting down? And I said, what's wrong with Mama? She said she has breast cancer. I'm adopted. I'm one of 7 children that she adopted. And when we were 6 weeks of age, my twin brother, I have a twin brother, my mother adopted us, and then she adopted 5 other children. So I'm one of 7. And I always say that I'm here because of 2 people. One gave me life, the other one gave me love. God took me out of my biological mother's womb and placed me in the heart of my adopted mother.
Wow, amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. And why did you decide to go back to be in Cleveland then? And why did you decide to go back?
No, I just went to Cleveland recently. I have investment in a daycare center there, 3. And so I went there to help to create a new type of curriculum that will help young people early on begin to develop the communication skills that I think that's very important in becoming successful in life. That's major, your mindset, but also to have a value for life. That we see so much violence as children. They said over 200 acts of violence when children are raised in a culture. Wow. And the study that was done by Dr. Seligman in the book called Learned Optimism, the 26-year most exhaustive study on self-esteem, said that between the ages of 0 and 5, that we develop permanent personality characteristics that follow us for the rest of our lives. And so I wanted to develop a curriculum that would teach children that life has value and that your life has value, to change their vision of themselves and to interrupt how they see themselves based upon being in a hostile culture. This is a hostile culture for people of color. Yeah. And so to me, one of the most important things to help people to overcome the psychic disrepair is creating a curriculum early on, and what we talk to parents about, that our children are molding today what they will be in the future. When I was a kid, I was born in an abandoned building on a floor with my twin brother Wesley, and we were adopted. When I was 6 weeks of age, I was labeled educable, mentally retarded. When I was in the 5th grade, they put me back from the 5th grade into the 4th grade. I failed again in the 8th grade. I have no college training. So being identified and labeled as DT, the dumb twin, it gave me a lot of things to overcome. And one of the things that Dr. Seligman said, that when you are between the ages of 0 and 5, a word is formulated in your heart. That word is yes, or that word is no. So when you're raised in poverty, that vision of yourself, that culture, those circumstances, those conversations, those things that you observe, they begin to create the lenses from which you see the world. And so to overcome that it's a major, major challenge. And so I wanted to use the things that I learned and begin to implement it, integrate those into the daycare centers that we have become involved in.
It's really cool. Yeah. Well, how many daycare centers are there now?
3.
3 of them. Gotcha.
Yes.
Very cool. What do you think it is that school is missing out on in general in the U.S.? What's the main thing?
They did a study of some top achievers and successful people around the world, and they wanted to find out what was the common denominator among them that enabled them to reach their goals. And what they discovered, that 85% of them reached their goals because of their attitude, their vision about themselves, and 15% because of their aptitude. So school, as you know, has been focused on reading, writing, and arithmetic. It does not consider critical thinking and the conceptual education, and it does not help young people begin to mold a vision of themselves that will allow them to be an asset to our society rather than a liability. In fact, particularly when it comes to children of minorities, one of the things that the school systems do, they track and determine based upon the failure rates of African American children and
Really?
Latino kids in the 3rd grade. Based upon those failure rates, they determine and extrapolate from those numbers how many prisons they're going to build. So if you can track failure, you can also track success. So when you come up in an environment that is, 1, designed to destroy your sense of self, and 2, give you and provide for you an inferior education. Like when I came up in school at Booker T. Washington High School, the money that was allocated to educate kids on Miami Beach and Coral Gables versus Booker T. Washington High Schools, it's just tremendous difference. And when we got books, we got the old books that were 5 and 6 years old, written in, pages torn out of. And when they gave the test on the new books that we never got, and they said that we were inferior, we believed them, because the newspaper said so, and we bought that. And so one of the worst things that you can do is provide an environment and get people to buy in a lie about themselves and cause them to live a small life as opposed to a life of achievement, because the culture is designed to hold us back. When I graduated from high school, a white high school dropout had more of a chance of getting a job than a black college graduate.
Wow.
Yeah, so that kind of environment, it destroys your sense of self.
When did you start? I mean, I was, never good at reading and writing. I was held back. I was, in the special needs classes, all those things through elementary school, middle school, had a tutor all the way through high school. Always felt like I needed to.
Yeah, my mother's tutor was a good switch. She believed my subconscious mind was in my behind. Oh, yes, but go ahead, yes.
And I'm curious, when did you start to believe in yourself? Or was someone...
My mother was working for a very wealthy family. She worked for wealthy families on Miami Beach. And I remember Mrs. Sidursky. She cooked for these families, and we ate the food left over from the families that she cooked for. She kept their children, and we wore the hand-me-down clothes of the children that she worked for. And when I had the assignment of cleaning Mr. Sidursky's office and shining his shoes, and he was listening to various motivational recordings. This is reel to reel. This is before 8-track and before cassettes. And those words I had no idea while I was shining his shoes, listening to people like Jim Rohn. When the end comes for you, let it find you conquering a new mountain, not sliding down an old one. People like Zig Ziglar, if you give enough people what they want, they will give you what you want. Listening to some of the words of Winston Churchill, the truth is incontrovertible, malice may attack it, ignorance may deride it, but at the end, there it is. And so I had no idea, while shining his shoes, listening to these words, that it began to restructure my vision of myself. And I had an interruption when I was in the 11th grade, because I was in special education from the 4th grade all the way to the 11th grade. And I met a gentleman by the name of Mr. Leroy Washington. I eulogized him last year. They call him the great communicator. And I was in his class waiting on another student. He said, "Young man, go to the board and work this problem out for me." And I said, "I can't do that, sir." And he said, "Why not?" I said, "I'm just here to see MacArthur Stevens. I'm not one of your students." He said, "Go to the board and do what I'm going to give you directions anyhow." And I said, "I can't, sir." And the other students started laughing, saying, "He's Leslie. He's got a twin brother, Wesley. Wesley's smart. He's DT." He said, "What's DT?" He's a dumb twin. And I said, "I am, sir." And he came from behind his desk. He looked at me. He said, "Don't you ever say that again." someone's opinion of you does not have to become your reality. And so what he did was what you do on this program every day. How people live their lives is a result of the story they believe about themselves. And when you have your program and your guests, and as they share ideas of how they move through the things that affect them, what you do is interrupt their story. I tell speakers, I train speakers how to discover their story, how to tell their story, and how to transform people individually and collectively by creating an experience. When I came into the speaking industry, it was based upon the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill's book was a good book, and they consider that the Bible of the motivational speaking industry. Well, I come to know because of my mentor, Mike Williams in Columbus, Ohio. He wrote the book called The Road to Your Best Stuff. He said, Les, if information could change people, everybody would be skinny, rich, and happy.
Right.
Okay. So he said, in order to change people, you have to create a significant emotional event that you have to interrupt a person's story that they believe about themselves with your story. And through the delivery of your story strategically, you dismantle their current belief system and inspire them to make new choices. Because at the end of a presentation, if you don't change how a person sees themselves, and if you don't expand their vision of themselves beyond their mental conditioning and their circumstances, and begin to allow them to get a larger vision of themselves and begin to ignite their spirit, you touch their hearts, and as a result, they leave your presence feeling better about themselves, but making new choices, because when you change how they see themselves, all you have to do after that is to get out of the way. The motivational industry is based upon a different type of method, like Tony, who I think is a great speaker. Tony, he trains to get people to go to a firewall, okay?
Yeah.
I'm training people to get into their greatness, to begin to develop the courage to pursue dreams beyond their comfort zones. Because in order to do something you've never done, you've got to become someone you've never been. When you're pursuing your greatness, you don't know what your limits are, so you act like you don't have any. And one of the reasons that Booker T. Washington said, judge a person not by what they accomplish, but what they had to overcome for their accomplishment. You know, so the challenge, I mean, for instance, in me having a global voice, I remember when Tony had an infomercial sponsored by Gunther Rinker, and they spent millions of dollars, and it was a blessing for me that they rejected me because I have the complexion of rejection. He has the complexion of connection. And so they said, oh, we don't believe a black guy can have appeal to the American public. I was so furious with that because it's called white privilege, you know. So I said, I don't have a backer. I don't have 4-color brochures. I still don't. I don't have millions of dollars backing me to develop a global voice. And Mike Williams, his goal was to train me to speak to the world. So I thought about it, and I remember something that Robert Schuller said, there's never a shortage of opportunities. It's just a shortage of thinking. And so when I saw what Tony was doing, training people to go to the back of the room and sign up for his firewalk, or all the other speakers to go back and get their products, I said, wait a minute. Impact drives income and referrals. I'm going to focus on training and developing a method and technique to transform people's lives individually and collectively, as Mr. Washington did for me. When he said to me, young man, go to the board and work this problem out for me, and I said, I can't do it. And he said, don't ever say that again. Someone's opinion of you does not have to become your reality. He interrupted my vision of myself. And as a result, my mother said, sticks and stones can break your bones, so words can never hurt you. That's a lie. Words can hurt you very deeply. And so, but he interrupted my vision of myself. And as a result of his example and the input, review, repetition, and reinforcement of that concept, and how he held me in his eyes when he looked at me, I was able to die to who I was and depart from the story that I bought into. Even if you had told a lie, faith comes by hearing and hearing and hearing. You hear it often enough, it becomes your reality. Perception, not challenge, becomes real for you. And so there was no one to dispute what was said about me, and I bought it. He interrupted that vision of myself in the 11th grade. Wow. And as a result of that, I began to become a different kind of person. And so listening to these various speakers, but then because of how I was rejected by Gunther Renker and those guys, I said, I don't have millions of dollars, but I got a story. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to figure out how to transform audience. I'm going to figure out how to make myself stand out. I don't have the money to compete with them. I don't have the complexion of connection. But one of the things that Mike said to me, he said, Brownie, pay more attention to the listening than the telling. Study the audience. Conduct communications intelligence. Don't assume that you know what they want to hear. He said, never let what you want to say get in the way of what the audience needs to hear. And so that's what I focused on. I always do a needs assessment. When I'm training speakers, I tell them, don't assume you know. Each audience is a different type of personality. Each area of industry, if you want to go big, if you want to speak globally, you want to become an expert on the audience. You got to learn and you got to study them so that you can have the versatility and flexibility to speak to any type of audience with your story and be able to transform them individually and collectively. And that impact will drive your income and your requests. The average speaker get around 25 to 30 requests a year. I get over 3,000 because of using that principle. And many of the speakers that I've trained now, and some of them have passed me using the same technique and strategies and have made millions of dollars.
Amazing.
Yes.
What would you say is the vision for your life right now?
My vision, I'm in a place of the Russian author, Leo Tolstoy. He said, as I face inevitable death, what in the meaning and purpose of my life that will not be undone or destroyed when I'm gone? And so the speakers that I train and the speakers that I influence and the people they train and transform their lives, that we are literally in God's pyramid, that work will not be undone or destroyed when I'm gone. And so my goal now, we learn, we earn, we pass it on. I noticed when Jim Rohn died and Zig Ziglar died, they had not trained anybody. We don't hear anything about the people that they poured into. I've got so many that can go with me toe to toe. However, I tell them, trust me on this. I said, don't let this 72 fool you. I still got the fire up in here, up in here. I taught you everything you know, not everything I know, all right?
Right.
Young brooms feet clean, but old broom know where to go. Okay. So to me, I believe we live in the greatest country in the world, bar none. We're talking about make America great again. Foolishness. We never stop being great. There's no country that can compare to us. And we have the opportunity, I believe, by multiplying voices of hope, that we can begin to create a new day. A lady came from Australia for me to train her, and she's rather wealthy. And I said, why did you come to me? And she said, I saw you speaking on YouTube in the Georgia Dome, and you were speaking to 80,000 people. She said, wow. And you spoke from your heart, and you held my attention, and I can see you were holding their attention. And she said, can you train me to tell my story from my heart? And I said, yes. And so she started to tell me a story. Wait a minute, you're scripted. I said, that's what set me apart from all the other speakers. They're scripted. If you have a script that you memorize, then you've got to speak from your head. You've got to regurgitate that script. I said, I will train you how to speak extemporaneously so you have the versatility and flexibility to create unforgettable moments in the context of your presentation. And so we started working together. Then she stopped for a moment. I said, can you tell me why you want to do this? And she said, yes. She said, when I saw Dalen Roof, the young white boy who went in a church and killed 9 black people, She said, I felt that there should have been someone standing to his right on trial because he was not born with that hatred in him to kill 9 black people. Somebody poisoned his mind. And then she paused and said, and this gave me goose pimples, and we both cried. She said, I believe the world is as it is, not because a few people are violent. I believe the world is as it is because too many people are silent. And I decided that my goal is at this chapter in my life as I face inevitable death, which I'm believing it will be a long time from now, okay?
Yes.
I can't believe that I'm 72. I used to think people in their 40s were old. Now that I'm 72, I feel I was a waiter at the Lord's Supper. So my goal is to train others how to tell their story, how to extract their story, how to organize it, how to deliver it in a way strategically to transform audiences. And I believe by multiplying those voices, we all have an energy signature. There are certain people, when I speak, I'm going to reach them. There's some people that will hear both of us, but there are some people, because of your energy signature, that when you speak, they will hear you not just in their ears, they're going to hear you in their heart. And as a result of them being in your presence and under the influence of your voice, when they leave your presence, you will inspire them, as Mother Teresa would say, to become a pencil in the hand of God and start writing a new chapter with their lives.
Wow.
Yes. So the goal is to train up. Probably if I can train 77. Mike Williams asked me, I wrote the foreword to his book, The Road to Your Best Stuff. He said, Brownie, how many Les Browns do you have? I said, I think I got 4. He said, you need more. I said, I know. 7 is my lucky number. I'm one of 7 children. I was born February the 17th. My phone number is 702. My address is 2737. Did I tell you 7 is my lucky number? Joshua marched around the walls of Jericho 7 times. Naaman dipped himself in the river Jordan 7 times. Did I tell you 7 is my lucky number? So I'm going to train 77 people to speak to the world, to transform lives, to make a difference. Horace Mann said we should be ashamed to die until we've made some major contribution to humankind. And I believe here we are living in the greatest country in the world where people risk their lives to get here, to outswim sharks, to trying to outrun jeeps barefooted. And yet and still, last year, according to the CDC, more people, over 3,000, committed suicide than died from accidents. And these people, I believe, did that because they felt hopeless and helpless. And had they heard your voice or my voice or someone else's voice, that would have interrupted the vision of being hopeless and helpless and empowered them. I had a guy he texted me the other day. He said, I was in a very dark place and I heard your voice and it brought me out into the light. Wow. So that's what the next chapter vision. Looked at. Yes, to train 77.
I'm going to have to take that training with you.
Oh, you're great already. You know?
I appreciate
If I could just touch the hem of your garment, I'll be made whole. Yes.
And I want to begin to talk about this amazing book with a quote, direct quote from your book. You said, Dr. Miles Monroe, the great preacher and orator, said, the wealthiest place on the planet is not in the Far East, where there is oil in the ground. It's not in South Africa, where there are diamond mines. The wealthiest place on the planet is the cemetery, for there you will find leaders who have never stepped up, innovators or innovations the world has never been exposed to, talents and potential never realized. I am reminded of another man who said, oh God, to reach the point of death only to realize you have never lived, only to realize that you never scraped the surface of your potential. I remember reading about a woman who had just left the doctor's office after having been told she had terminal cancer. She made herself a cup of coffee when she returned home, and as she sipped it, she suddenly, filled with anger, with rage, and hurled the cup against the wall and shattered it in many pieces. And as she threw it, she screamed out, I refuse to die and unlive life. And then ending that section, you said this, the only way that you can break through the atmosphere and reach higher altitudes is by being hungry. Hunger is the most crucial element of creating your greatest life. I love this book because I thought that was a great way of capturing our attention. Why this subject of hunger, and using that as an analogy or a metaphor. Why did you choose to use hunger as a metaphor for desire?
If you are casual about your dream, you will end up a casualty with your dreams. That most people unconsciously die long before they're buried because they don't realize that they have been marginalized, that they live in a culture where they're told more about what they cannot do rather than what they can do. We've been programmed to think in terms of being one-dimensional, of being an employee, of going to college, graduating, getting a job, working for 40 years, expecting to retire on 40%, which wasn't enough in the first place. The 40-40 plan is gone. It's been interrupted. And so, but most people are not aware of that. The great anthropologist, Margaret Mead, was in London, and she was having dinner. So one of the waiters said, you know, there's several Americans here tonight. And so she said to her guest, let me show you something. She said, let me know when you serve them dessert, and I'll tell you exactly how many are here. He said, you couldn't possibly. She said, just let me know when you serve them dessert. And so when he left, he came back, he said, okay, I've served them dessert. She got up and she walked around and she said, there are 35 Americans in this restaurant. He looked at the roster, he was shocked. He said, how did you know that? She said, in the UK, when you eat a slice of pie or cake, you eat it from the crust toward the tip. In America, when we eat a slice of pie or cake, we eat it from the tip toward the crust. How do you eat a slice of pie?
I eat a slice of pie from the crust to the tip.
Yeah, now, so you're an exception because you came up in a British culture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So, but the average American would eat a slice of pie from the tip toward the crust. Mm-hmm. Well, no one told us to do that. We just picked it up. Mm-hmm. For instance, before 1980, you walk around, you would not see people with tattoos. The majority of people that you see today have tattoos. Where'd that come from? How could that happen? What created that? There was no advertising on television saying, go out and get a tattoo. Well, in America, we incarcerate more people than any place else in the world. And in prison, you're not allowed to draw on the walls. You're not allowed to use your artistic skills on the walls of the prison. There's a penalty. You'll be penalized. You'll be put in the hole in solitary confinement. So they're bored. They have nothing else to do. And so they write on each other's bodies. They write tattoos. So now, when you see people today, all on television and commercials, you see tattoos everywhere. Nobody told them to go out and get it, but being in the culture, there's some things that you pick up. And so picking up a limited vision of yourself is natural when you're in a culture that does not recognize your greatness, that does not recognize your humanity, and create a culture that is designed to destroy your sense of self. And so in order to break out of that, to realize that you are made in the likeness and image of God, to realize that you've been given authority and dominion over everything on the face of the earth, that it takes everything in you. People that are hungry are unstoppable. People that are hungry are relentless. People that are hungry will find a way to win. People that are hungry will not take no for an answer. People that are hungry won't give up. They will persist until they succeed. That's what's required to make it today.
Yes, yes, definitely.
So if there's another father and daughter duo that do what you do anywhere in the world, I'm trying to think, is there anyone?
I don't know. I've
we're
never
the
seen
first
that.
family of motivation.
Yes.
You are.
Yeah.
So you must be enormously proud of her.
Yes.
Tell me a bit about that.
Well, but here's the shocking part. Are you ready for it? She's also my coach.
No, shut up, really?
She said to me one day, Daddy, are you coachable? I'm saying to myself, I know she's not asking me. I won the highest award from Toastmasters International, inducted into the National Speakers Hall of Fame, and selected among the top 5 speakers in the world. You're gonna ask me, am I coachable by you? So I said, yes, I am, reluctantly. And then she pointed out something in my presentation that I've been doing for years. And I became very humble. I said, you got a point. And I made the adjustment that she told me. And it made all the difference in the world. So I said, well, will you coach me forever?
Oh, wow.
And I don't invoice him either. But I think this is a good point. I want to bring this out because I think Spencer can do something with this. Because I love your mind, the way it thinks, right? So Dad used to say in his presentation for years that one of the hardest things that he did, one of the easiest things he ever did was to earn $1 million. One of the hardest things he ever did was to believe it could happen to him. And so I said in the coaching, I said, Dad, when you say it could happen to you, it's almost as if you're positioning as if you won the lotto. There's no ownership. I said, it didn't happen to you. You studied, you journaled, you did the work, you went to workshops, you took training, you went to stages and spoke for sometimes chicken dinners. Like you paid dues and you had this vision that you built and developed. And so it's not that it happened to you, it's that the easiest thing you ever did was to earn $1 million. The hardest thing you ever did was to believe that you could do it. He said, whoa.
Yes.
And
That's
then he
real.
shifted. He never said that again, but he had been saying that for years and no one caught it.
A lot of people don't identify with that either, do they? It's kind of like the apprenticship as you go through it. They don't realize what they're learning along the way. And also a lot of people don't feel like they're worth it.
Right.
They don't feel that they have any inherent value. And so because they don't feel they have a value, they can't always believe what's possible. Does that make sense to you?
Totally.
Yes, the area of feeling deserving is so major, particularly if you live in a culture where you've been marginalized and your sense of self has been destroyed. There's a guy named Richard Wright who wrote, he was a very profound thinker and poet. He said, the impulse to dream has been slowly beaten out of me through the experiences of life. And because of what he went through, he wrote a book called The Invisible Man, that he had lost his sense of self and he didn't even think about dreaming because of life was so brutal to him to keep him down. And so there are so many people around the world. I'm looking at things on television about slavery and people being kidnapped and sex slaves and all these types of things. Dehumanization is more prevalent now than ever before. Yes, we're just exposed to the information on it.
Right.
And so we have a lot of work to do. And in the work that we're doing, my goal is, I believe that we should speak to bring life and to give hope, because when there's hope in the future, that gives you power in the present. And that we're very fortunate to be here and to be able to still make a difference, to build a legacy. We feel that evil prevails when good men and women do nothing. And so we see speaking from a perspective that is cause-centered. I believe it's been hijacked by speaking to sell. But I believe that when you speak, you distract, dispute, and inspire. How people live their lives is a result of the story they believe about themselves. And so you distract them from that story. Through the execution of your speaking, you create an experience that allow them to begin to see themselves differently, to get out of their history into their imagination. You expand their minds, you touch their heart and ignite their spirit. And they leave there being, as Mother Teresa would say, a pencil in the hand of God, and start writing a new chapter in their lives.
That's really profound to me. Tony Robbins was talking to me about Operation Underground Railroad with the children and the people that are brought out of sex slavery.
Yes.
And what they do. And that's the fastest growing criminal network in the world.
Yes.
And those people that have been exposed to that and experienced that, first of all, don't look at what the future looks like. They just dwell on the scenario and the environment that they've been involved with. And they do need to be inspired. They do need to, as you just described it there just beautifully, you know, ignite that fire back in them, because there's a lot of people that have gone through a lot of tough times.
Yes.
And you know, a lot of us don't remember how lucky we are. A lot of the times we take for granted, don't we? And we dwell on our sorrows. Mm-hmm. And these types of people that come from that place and build again, okay, are always going to need support. And people like you, I believe, give that inspiration to people. I mean, think about it, those motivational videos that you see on YouTube, 1 in a million doesn't have your voice on. All of the others do. They're you, and so your voice moves people. Okay, it impregnates people in some part of their body, their mind somehow. Okay, and makes them want to charge forward. And that's a very powerful and strong place to be, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that who you are behind the words that you speak. When I'm training speakers, and that's where my life is now. You learn, you earn, you pass it on. And when I'm working with speakers, I say to them, who you are behind the words are far more important than the words that you speak. And so it's very important. We first work on the messenger and then on the message. I'm merely an inspirational speaker for a Jewish carpenter, but that's another conversation, all right? So, but self-development, that we have people speaking and inspiring people to live their dreams, and they haven't done anything.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
So you want to raise the bar on yourself. You want to be the example. You want to be the message. You want to be congruent with the words that you're speaking. Don't practice what you preach, but preach what you practice.
Your career, right? There are a lot of people, I think, in this day and age, and I want to, this is foreshadowing something I want to get into. You do something, though, that a lot of people wish or hope that they could do. So I want to talk about how you got there, right? Because we all come from somewhere, come from something. Where's home? Where are you from? Give us the origin story.
I was conceived in Gainesville, Georgia, but I was born in Miami, Florida. My birth mother, I just discovered, here I am, 78, and I just discovered, if people go online and see the Les Brown surprise, 2021 surprise, that my birth mother and father, they were from Gainesville, Georgia. So when she became pregnant, she decided, because Gainesville is such a small town, to come down to Miami and to give birth to me and my twin brother. We became foster kids. She gave us to Mrs. Mamie Brown. Whenever I speak, I always say, all that I am and all that I ever hope to be, I owe to my mother, that God took me out of my biological mother's womb and put me in the heart of my adopted mother. And so that's how I ended up in Liberty City. We were born in an abandoned building on a floor. Jackson Memorial Hospital at that time in Miami did not receive black kids or black people. And so we ended up, they were driving around and she started having labor pains, the rumor goes, and they saw this abandoned building and went in and gave birth to us.
Growing up, I wanted to be an attorney. What did you aspire to be growing up?
I wanted I had a compelling urge to want to take care of my mother, because Mama adopted my twin brother and I, and she never had any children herself, and she adopted 5 other kids. So we were first foster children, and then we became adopted. And I decided very young, seeing how hard she worked as a single mother, I said, I'm going to take care of you, Mama, when you get older. And when I become a man, I'm gonna buy your home, and you'll never ever pay another bill, because I believe that I'm old school. And I asked her, when will I be a man? She said, when you turn 18. I said, when I turn 18, you'll never pay another bill. And my mother, the way she raised us, my brothers and I, she said, if your wife has a job and a husband too, one of them's got to go. So I said, you won't have to worry about that anymore. I got you.
Where does that confidence come from? I imagine from her, right? But
Yes. Well, I learned from my mother. She was so relentless and unstoppable. She went through a whole lot. She only had a third grade education, but she was a person that when she made up her mind to do something, she made it happen. She promised our birth mother, Dorothy Bell Rucker, who's from Gainesville, Georgia, and a motivational speaker and an educator, and my grandmother, Beulah Rucker. They have the Beulah Rucker Museum in Gainesville. She was a motivational speaker and teacher and educator. She spoke with Mary McLeod Bethune and New Eleanor Roosevelt. And so she promised her that, hey, these boys will never go to bed hungry. They will always have clothes on their back and a roof over their head. And she kept her word. And one of the things that I believe as we look at ourselves, look at our goals and dreams, we must honor ourselves with our words, and that because words have power. And she had a lot of choices of giving us to just anybody, but she didn't. She waited for the right person. And they said that when the two of them met, Dorothy Bell Rucker and Mamie Brown, Mr. Moss, my godfather, said, she looked her in the eyes and she got real close, their nose already about to touch. And she asked, are you going to take care of my boys? And she said, yes, ma'am, I've never had any children before. She said, you promise never to allow anybody to separate them. She said, yes, ma'am. And then the two of them stood there and looked at each other. And it was very silent. And Mr. Moss said that my birth mother at that time, with tears in her eyes, said, this is the one. I want her to take my boys. And so at that moment, she gave us to Mamie Brown. And when Mama started walking out with us, Mr. Moss said, my birth mother followed close behind, and Mr. Moss opened the door and she got in the car. And then my birth mother came close to the window, said, you swear you will take care of them? And she said, I swear. And she kissed us that one last time. And she said, as she hit the side of the car, go, Mr. Moss. Go now. And he said he drove off slowly. And Mama, she leaned back and she looked at us and started rocking. And she just said, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus.
It's a powerful story.